This oil pump on the engine right here. Foot clearance actually isn't too bad at all with it. And like I said, I have two different tires on there because I wanted to mock up the turbo with this tire because it's larger, and if anything, that one would give me more fitment issue than my street tires because these are only 17s. So that's why I have two separate tires on the bike. But oil pump is pretty sweet though. Only sticks out past the cover 35 millimeters. And then you guys can also see the foot clearance isn't too bad either. This is like a lot more forward than I would have my foot to if I was shifting, because gear shifter sits back quite a bit of ways away from the pump. So it's like about right there. All right, so I'm making a little bit more progress on the new turbo build. You guys seen in my last video, I picked up this new pump from Dirtbike Performance. This was intended to be the oil return pump from the turbo. So basically this fitting right here would hook up to the turbo oil return port on the turbo, or turbo oil return line, sorry. And then how this works is obviously you have that drive spud right there, and then the oil that comes from the turbo up into this port is basically spit back into the engine through that little hole right there. You can actually see the pump gears too. So me being me, just wanting to be extra, I'm trying to figure out a way to make this a dual purpose pump, because I do not want to tie into my engine oiling system. So I've been playing around with the idea of potentially having like a closed loop oiling system just for the turbo. So normally this pump, which is a scavenge pump, this port right here, which would normally have suction on this line right here, which is the turbo oil return. So first thing first, what would have to change is this port right here, which is a suction port, or I guess a vacuum port. This would be connected to the engine oil sump. So this is basically where all the oil sits in the engine. I'm thinking about doing this with swage lock, so it looks a little bit more, cleaner, and I can get like some tighter radius bands on it, so that way it's no overhang underneath the cradle of the bike. So after this line is connected to the engine oil sump, it would basically go into what was originally the turbo oil return port. So this port right here. This would have to get welded up because this is actually what spits the oil back into the engine. So that port would get completely welded. And then on top of the pump, thinking about drilling a small hole right here, which would be the equivalent to the ID of a 3AN turbo oil feed fitting. So that would be somewhere, along the body of the pump. Haven't quite figured out how I want to clock it yet. And then out of that fitting, that would go to the turbo. This is the oil feed port on the turbo right here. And like I said, this is pressurized oil. And then out of the CHRA, you have your oil return. This would come down and then tie into the same suction fitting that is tied to the engine oil sump. I do want to go over this a little bit more because hopefully this wouldn't introduce, oil aeration into the system. I might be overthinking a little bit, but I feel like maybe a restrictor or a check valve needs to be tied in somewhere in this area. And I'm thinking more so on this engine oil sump area, because obviously this pump moves a lot of volume. and I definitely do not want this to suck the engine oil sump dry. So yeah, this is what I'm thinking right now. This would definitely be more ideal than the first oiling system that I had set up on the bike. And for those that don't know, with the original turbo setup, with the Ego Boost turbo, I pretty much fed the turbo, or I had the oil feed line of the turbo connected to a port that I welded on the oil filter housing cap. I'm really not too fond of doing turbo oil feed like that, because I really don't want to rob the engine internals of oil pressure. These bikes already don't make a lot of pressure as it is once the engine's hot. On a cold start, I would normally see maybe 70 psi, 70, 75 psi of oil pressure with running 15W40 oil. I'll probably still either run that or 20W50 this time just to be safe. But I do feel like this setup would be a lot better, because then I wouldn't have to always have anxiety about, robbing oil pressure from the cams or just any engine internal. So this is what I'm thinking as of now. I don't know if you have any suggestions. Feel free to leave them in the comments. But this is definitely something I kind of want to push forward with. So, yeah, as always, like, comment, subscribe, please share. Like I said, things are starting to get rolling with this project, and you can definitely expect an update soon. But yeah, just stay on the lookout, and yep, stay tuned. Peace.